Okay, last one. This is just how to use the calculator. I better make sure I move so you can see it. That's the most important part. Okay, and so for this one, we're going to use the data values from that short data set where we found the standard deviation. This way, we'll be able to compare it with the results we got and see that when we did it by hand, we got the right answer. So the steps are right here, but just reading steps can be confusing for people. So I've recorded this video to go through these steps right here and to show it for you. And you'll have this list here to help you out with it and the video. Okay, so what do you have to do? So to enter data in a list, you hit Stat and then Edit. Stat's a button right here that you can find on the calculator. I hope you can see my mouse okay. Stat, and then Edit. Remember, you can hit Enter because I'm on it, or you can just hit the number that you want. So I want the number 1, so I'm going to hit 1. Yeah. Now, the next thing it talks about is clearing a list. Like, I don't want the number 5. I could just type it over and that would be fine, but I just want to show you this. Like, suppose you had a really long list and you didn't want to have to delete stuff. If you go to the heading of the list, so I need to go up to the very top, and then you hit clear, and it says move out of the heading, so you can go any way you want to. That clears the list. If you go up to the top and you hit delete, the list disappears. It's not gone forever, but it disappears, and that's very scary for people. So don't do that. All right, so I'm going to put my stuff into L1 here, and so that's the clearing list one. So now I want to enter the data in the list, and so it's really easy. You just type in the numbers. So I want 1, and then you can hit down, I think maybe, or just hit enter. I know that works. And then 2, enter, and then 2, enter. And then 4, enter, and then 11, enter. And now I got my data in my list. Awesome. Okay, so now calculating summary statistics. After the data has been entered in L1, oh yeah, we could do it right now. You hit Stat. This is on the list here, so you can just follow the steps. You hit Stat, and now we want to calculate something. It says Stat Calc, so we have to move over to this menu. So I have to right arrow over because I want to calculate something. And I want to calculate some one variable stats because I only have one variable. So I hit enter or choose the number 1. Now it just checks to make sure you want to find L1 because you might have your data in a different list, so you can change it. If you want a different list, you can't just type the letter L and the number 3 if that's what you wanted. You have to find the L3 that's sitting right here on your pad. You can see it, the number 3, and it's in blue. So you have to hit second to pick that one, and then the number 3. And notice it changed to L3. But I don't want that. Clear. I want to hit second and L1 because I want L1. That's where I put my data. Awesome. All right. And Stat Calc, so that's L1. There we go. Frequency list, don't worry about it all. And so I just need to calculate. And so I'm just going to go down to that and hit enter to choose it and calculate. So here we go. We've got X bar equals 4. Now we know what that means. You might have been wondering otherwise. X bar is the sample mean. So assuming this is a sample of data, the mean is 4. Actually, the mean doesn't change if it's a sample or population. It's got a couple things here. Sigma must have to do with adding. Don't worry about it. You don't need this at all. Standard deviation of X, and then notice right here it's sigma X. So the standard deviation, the sample standard deviation, that's what we worked out, was 4.1, just like we got. That's bigger than if this was a population, then it would be this one. Like I said, we're generally, 99% of the time, we're going to use this, and maybe even higher. We're going to use the sample standard deviation. And a few more things. N is 5. That's the sample size is 5. The min is 1. Q1 is 1.5. Oh, it's giving me quartiles. The median is 2. Q3 is 7.5, and the max is 11. Now, they use their method for calculating quartiles, which, remember that because there's some choice about including or not including, so you might get slightly different values. And to be honest, this is a silly data set to work on quartiles since there's only 5 data points. Why not just make min, Q1, median, Q3, max? And there, we'll go with that. That's my 5-number summary. So yeah, it's kind of silly, but you can see it gives you those values. So you can find the quartiles on your calculator. But if you don't understand how to do it, it's a problem. Like think about the problems where we talked about where we said find the median and we just show you a histogram. Then you can't type the data into your calculator to work it out. So you have to actually understand this stuff. Okay, So that's calculating summary statistics. But wait a minute, making histograms? What? Now this is gonna be kind of a silly one because we only have 5 data points, but I just want to show you how it does this. So it says stat plot. So stat plot is in blue up here, right here. And so it's in blue, so I need to hit second and that button. Stat plots, sweet. And then graph. So okay, yeah, it was a little short here. So I want to turn one of these on. These are saved formats for graphs. So I want to turn this on. So I'm going to go into this one and edit this one because this is one of the plots and it's off. I don't want it off. I want it on. I want it doing stuff. So I'm going to go into that by choosing the number 1 and we go in. So now we're going to change it. We want to turn it on, enter to toggle it. Now I'm going to go down. We don't want this. We want a histogram because I said that. So arrow, arrow over to histogram. And then I'm going to hit enter to choose that one. XList is L1, like it. Frequency is 1, like it. And the color is blue, fine. You could change it. If you don't have a color one, don't worry about it. This is not going to be a time where you're like, oh, I wish I had color. Yep. And now, so we've done that. Graph number 3, that's what they meant about graph number 3 right there, is that we're picking the third one. And now it says zoom 9. I'll show you why. If you just hit graph right now, well, actually, that I got kind of lucky there. Well, no, not entirely. Remember, there's a number that's an 11 that's not showing up on my graph. So it doesn't choose a window. It just goes with whatever the window was before. And so your data could be totally somewhere different, and you don't even see it when you hit graph. So you need to get a good window. The cool thing is the shortcut zoom 9 makes a nice window. Zoom 9 makes a window to fit your statistics. So you have to have the thing turned on so it knows which your stat plot turned on. So it knows, oh, you want me to find a window for that, for those data points. Oh, and then it'll find a window and it'll make sure the window is big enough. Now, the funny thing is because there's so few data points, it ended up grouping all of the early ones here, and then the 11 is over here. If I hit trace, I can go through the values. So between a 1 and a 4.3, there were 4 data points, all the first 4. And then I can go arrow to the right, and between 11 and 14.3, there was 1 data point. So this is really lousy as a histogram goes, but there were only 5 data points, so making a histogram in the first place was kind of silly. I wanted to make it fast, though. Now, one thing it said here, I'm just going through the next thing. Trace will show class boundaries and frequencies. That's what we just did. Window, so hit window. And then there's this thing that says X scale. That's the width of the bars. So remember, I only saw it like, the 4 of them got grouped into 1. So I'm going to go down and I'm going to change that to 1 to try to spread them out more because they were so grouped together. And now I'm going to, again, hit graph. I don't want to hit zoom 9 again because if I do zoom 9 again, it'll go back to the old one. So I'm just going to hit graph now. And now you can see it's a lot better. Same window, but it just made the bars thinner. And I was controlling that manually instead of letting the computer do it itself. Sweet. Making box plots. I can make a box plot on here. Awesome. So making box plots. Stat plot. Okay, I can do that. Second, stat plot. Cool. And now graph number 4. So I have to go in one of these. I didn't have that in the instructions. But I'm going to go in one of these. So I'm just going to choose the number 1 to change that one. I don't want to go to 2 because then 1 will still be turned on. And I don't want the histogram anymore. I just want the box plot. So I'm going to hit 1. Cool. And now on is great. I like on. And then I'm going down and now I want the box plot. Now you can see I've got the box plots here. One does show outliers. The other one doesn't show outliers. So it's a choice, whichever one you prefer. We'll pretty much always have the outlier one turned on because that seems good. XList, good. Frequency, color is fine. And then I'm just going to hit zoom 9 again. Actually, I don't think it matters. I can just hit graph. We'll see. If I don't like it, I'll hit zoom 9. That didn't work. Let's go back into second y equals here. Oh, it didn't register. Let's see what happened. So what I'm modeling for you here is making sure you don't freak out when something goes wrong. So I'm going to go down, arrow, 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 and then hit enter, choose that. Oh, I didn't hit enter on it. I was just sitting on it. I never hit enter. And you can see now it changed all the stuff. So it's like, oh, okay, good. All right, and now I can hit graph. And I got a box plot. You can see it calculated Q3 in a weird way because I think it doesn't include the median, and so it averaged the last two data points to find Q3. But again, this is a small data set, so it's weird. But I got a box plot. Awesome. Last thing then I want to show you is the whole thing about the resistance issue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and I'm actually going to, whoops, not that. Sorry. I'm going to go stat edit and I'm going to update this and I'm going to do it for a larger data set. So I'm going to do it for the commute times that I had earlier. So let me pause it and I'll type it in so you don't have to watch that. Okay, I've entered in all the commute times. I scrolled over and got all the commute times. I've entered them all in. Let me just see a graph of what this looks like. So let's see, what kind of thing do we want to do? I'll do a box plot. That seems pretty good. And it's L1. I like that. And so I'm just going to hit graph and see what it looks like. Oh shoot, I didn't change the window because these numbers are a lot bigger. So I need to hit zoom 9 then. Remember, zoom 9 fits a window to my data. Okay, that looks weird. I mean, the 110 is bigger than everything, but it's only about twice as big as 60. But on my graph, it's huge. That's the 110 one. Wonder what's going on. There's a few things you can do here. One thing is you could trace your data and trace it and find it that way. Another way, you could go into your list and say, did I mistype any of those? And then I'm going to go down my list and say, did I mistype any of those? And oh, I mistyped it. This is just a problem-solving thing. When you get a crazy graph that doesn't make any sense with your data, go in and see if you mistyped anything, because that's usually what it is. 110. At least that's what it usually is for me. All right, let's do zoom 9 again, because we need a good window. Zoom 9. There we go, because that was an outlier. The 110 was an outlier, and I could see it. Awesome. All right, now I'm going to do one variable stats. Can you remember how to do that? I like to quit out of my graph when I do it. One variable stats, you hit stat and then calculate. Make sure you're doing this on your calculator. If you just follow along and you're like, I'll watch them, I'll remember. You got to do this so much that it just becomes autopilot by the end of the year. Stat, calc, one variable stats. There it is. And that all looks good. And oh, we didn't. I was like, that's not the standard deviation we got. We never found the standard deviation for this data set. That's right. I use this for quartiles. A little nervous there for a moment. Okay, so we've got our standard deviation is 28. So on average, looking at this data set, on average they're 28 away from the mean, right? That's the idea. Now, what if I had that mistyped thing? So I'm going to go back in. Whoops, not y equals. I'm going to stat edit. And I'm going to mistype the 110. If something's on the way bottom of the list, if you go up, it goes around the world and comes in on the bottom. So that's a little pro tip there. I'm going to mistype it again as 1100 instead. So think about this idea. None of these values have changed. And we're trying to find a typical, an average distance from the mean. And now there's one data value there's one person's commute now that's 1100 minutes long. That's brutal. That's a tough commute, man. So this person has an 1100 minute commute. And so now what's the standard deviation? So I'm going to work out the standard deviation again. Remember how to do it? You can say it ahead of me. Stat, calculate, one variable stats. Boom. Oh, I have to say L1. Yes. And calculate. So now it says the average distance from the mean is 298 minutes. And obviously that does not represent this data set very well. That represents the fact that there's one crazy outlier. So you can see why the standard deviation gives you some really funky results. I mean, it's accurately reflecting the average distance from the mean. But when we're trying to talk about how spread out this data is, basically we've got this one data value that's completely blowing up the whole measure. And I know we wanted to include all the data values, but not if one data value was going to freak the whole thing out and make the numbers just crazy. So this is why, going back to the stuff we had earlier, actually I can just do, so this is why we had that little discussion about standard deviation and resistance, talking about how the standard deviation isn't resistant. You throw a weird outlier in there, it blows the whole thing up and you get crazy answers. And so we need to think about the fact that when we use standard deviation, we don't want to use it in a situation where there's a really, really high value or really, really low value. Sneeze. Excuse me. Uh, because if we do that, we're not really reflecting the data set as a whole. We're reflecting one value. We want to try to incorporate more things with the standard deviation, but we don't want one thing to take over. And so we're going to formalize this a little more in class on Wednesday. Wednesday, we're going to finish up chapter 1. And actually, we've really finished all the content, but we just want to give you a chance to practice some things and connect some ideas and get a sense of it and just like wrap it up and be done with it. So on Wednesday, we'll be finishing chapter 1, but this was a big part of it, was dealing with the standard deviation, and we'll do more next time. All right, that's the last video. You've done a great job. If you've gotten through all these and done all the notes, we'll see you in class on Wednesday.